the committed one. Do you think this OP takes responsibility in her marriage? I've been married for 5 years, have a 2-year-old son and am 5 months pregnant with our second child. At face value, my husband seems like a really good man. He has a good job, is very loving to our son, and our dog comes from a good family where his parents have been married 40+ years. When we go out with friends, he appears to be very attentive toward me and is loving. However, he has a really dark side. He was recently diagnosed with ADHD after years of me thinking he was just abusive. The ADHD causes him to have intense fits of anger and blame, complete denial of many things he does and says to me, and the typical inability to follow through on anything. He plays video games incessantly, 6+ hours a day is not atypical, and ignores me on a regular basis. When I say that I feel ignored, he says I should stay in the room while he plays, like somehow that will give me the time together I'm asking for. He has said some really ugly things to me over the course of our relationship, 7+ years total. Most of it has been behind closed doors. He's called me a piece of crap and some other savory names. Occasionally he'll curse me out in front of family and friends and insulting my parenting skills. For the record, our son is a very sweet, loving little boy, and people regularly comment on how well-behaved and good-natured our son is. Most recently, he accused me of making up the fact that I had 2 miscarriages prior to getting pregnant this time. Both were early but were clinically considered miscarriages. He did apologize, but when you hear stuff like this over and over, it becomes harder to forgive and forget. In public and in front of our son, he frequently berates the way I parent, which upsets our son. He frequently puts me between himself and my parents, who live across the country. So, visits with them are always tough. I was a stay-at-home mom for the first 10 months of my son's life until I got so frustrated with his unwillingness to help out at all. Neither his parents nor mine are in the city where we are. We have no other family nearby, and our friends tend to be wrapped up in their own lives. He would repeatedly berate how I cooked, cleaned, handled our son, and basically did everything. Then he told me we were going broke while I found out he was amassing hundreds of thousands of dollars in investments. I went back to work determined to help with our income, just get a break. I was really successful in my sales job in my first year, but eventually he started resenting my work. He would curse when my cell phone rang and say I worked too much, but then ask when the next check was coming. Now we have a nanny who takes care of our son and cleans our house, but the second she leaves, it all comes back to me. I don't have a 9-to-5 job, and mine frequently calls for work during evenings and weekends. This morning, when I said we should consider getting some new kitchen appliances because ours were starting to break and not work well. I'm not spoiled, they are over 10 years old and not top of the line by any means. He said I should plan on making more money. He won't take time out from his day unless it's an absolute emergency or involves his dog, but he is more willing now to help with after-hours work. Though when he does help, he needs at least equal time to relax and unwind. My mom says I should quit my job. We'd be okay financially, but his lack of motivation and general ambivalence toward his own job leave me concerned that if he lost his, we'd really be up a creek. It took him 11 months of not working to find the one he's had for the last 5 years. He doesn't help with any of the cooking, cleaning outside of what our nanny does, grocery shopping, or any of the other mundane tasks of running a household other than paying the bills online. My working affords us having a gardener, so no more yard work for him. I even took care of replacing our hot water heater and repairing garage door opener because he couldn't take the time to deal with them. I was exhausted a lot of the time earlier on from the pregnancy, and he thought I was faking it. I had morning sickness for the first 3 months and just felt lousy, but because I physically didn't get sick, he thought I was just being a baby. His mother and sister were the epitome of health during their pregnancies, so he just can't understand why I don't feel that good too. We've been in therapy on and off for the last 2 years with 3 therapists. I just feel like I've gone from being a very confident, independent person to someone who is insecure, unappreciated, and alone. I live in a city. I hate his choice to move here despite the fact that he telecommutes, and we really have no other ties other than his parents living here seasonally for about 3 months. Divided by year, I have very few good friends and limited job options. I've asked to move numerous times to be closer to friends and family, but his answer is always that he needs to be close to his corporate headquarters, 2 hours flight away, which he seldom visits. After the insults and nastiness, he always apologizes and gets more involved temporarily, but the next episode is always around the corner. I'm terrified that our son will think this is normal, and am worried that I will waste my life with someone who doesn't even care enough most times to ask how my day is. I've had better interaction with roommates. He is not really willing to go to counseling with me anymore, and no one ever sees this side of him. I've tried to figure out how to record our arguments per one of our therapists, but logistically it seems impossible because of the size of our house. I don't want to leave, but am concerned about the long-term effect on our children and my own psyche. I continually try to figure out how to make it better, but we always end up at the same place, with me completely frustrated at his lack of participation in our marriage and our life in general. I know marriage is never a 50/50 split, but I didn't think I'd do most everything. I just don't know what to do. My friends and family have commented they don't know how I do it and have asked what I will do when the new baby comes. I just don't know, but I'm really scared of the prospect of it all. I don't even have anywhere to go if I leave. I would have to give up my career here because I can't live in a city with no help from family because I'm sure I wouldn't be able to afford it otherwise. The idea of starting over just makes me feel sick. I'm a really resourceful person, but this is truly the first time in my life that I've never been able to come up with a solution for my problem, and time is not healing anything. I know money should not be an issue, but it's the hard reality of life. We don't live an extravagant lifestyle, but I hesitate to take on single parenthood without my family who I will need for support with raising 2 kids. He hates the knee even though we are both from there and has made it very clear that he has no desire to live there. I have a hard enough time with the hours I keep and no help where I live in no man's land. Unfortunately, moving closer to my family would put me just outside New York City, which is not terribly affordable. Also, the majority of my business contacts are there because it's where I grew up and started my career, so it would be one of the easiest places in the country for me to get a good job for what would make living and paying for childcare and other living expenses more feasible. I guess it's time to speak to someone, a lawyer, a little further about my options. 10 years plus later, my husband and I had a really difficult marriage for many years, but we've been married for 11 and together for 13. We have 3 kids, 8, 5, and 3 months. If you read any of my other posts, I talk about him being mean and saying hurtful things, threatening to leave when he'd get mad and screaming at me for years. I wanted his attention and just couldn't get it. I tried seducing him, lingerie, going to therapy with him and alone and trying to understand his ADHD, serious level of involvement with video games and being a working freak. Somewhere along the way, I let an old colleague into my life and shared what was going on. He, like everyone else, acted as if what my husband was doing was wrong and I felt a little validated. At some point, he expressed feelings for me. I had a little crush on him. He lives in another state, 6+ hours drive away, but one thing led to another and it became an emotional affair and then a pod that went on and off for 5 years. We were intimate about 6 times, but I never saw him otherwise. It was texts and Skype and instant message. We exchanged a few pictures and at the point I decided I wanted out, he decided to blackmail me, saying that he would expose the pictures he had of me, and he claimed that he had pictures he took of me when we were together. I'm not sure I believe it. Long story short, because this was all via text, I had to take screenshots of my phone. I'm not stupid, but I really didn't understand how having an iCloud worked. My husband, on the other hand, is a VP in a tech company and has specialty cloud networks. The pictures I took ended up on my iCloud, and when he bought me a new computer and was setting it up, he found those screenshots. Initially, I downplayed it and said that it was just texting and dirty texting. He went through every device, computer, iPad, etc., and found a lot more. He exploded and I withheld all of the truth because after I severed communication with the other man who reacted by trying to blackmail me again, which I refused to give into, I was ready to face whatever he had to dish out if he was really going to act. His first reaction was to try to X the guy, and he was prepared to drive to another state to do it. I didn't want him to go to jail or worse because the other man has guns and end up injured himself. So, I never told him the full extent that I talked to this guy for 5 years. I only told him that I saw him twice and it was for 2021 and 2022. One major thing he really struggled with is that as we were trying to conceive our 3rd child, and this was when the year was ending, there was a little overlap with the last time I slept with other man and when we were trying to conceive, but absolutely no possibility that our baby is OMS. She was conceived in June and the last physical contact with other man was in March. We reconciled initially, but he struggled to understand why I had done what I did, which I completely understand. I felt awful and take full responsibility for my actions and the impact it will have on us and our 3 kids. Over the last few weeks, I wrestled with myself as we tried to get on with our lives. He'd have moments of doubt and tell me he didn't trust me, which I understood. To complicate things, when I was pregnant, he had to go to work in Brazil, and while out at a bar or club with some colleagues, a very forward girl introduced herself and put her phone number in his phone. When he got home from this trip, he was acting weird, always checking his phone, keeping it face down, so one morning, at 5 a.m. I checked his phone and found a conversation with this girl, much younger, and a picture of her naked with her nipples covered up. I was 9 months pregnant and due in less than a month. It was devastating, but I didn't want to give up my marriage. I thought karma had just bit me in the butt and almost felt like I deserved it. When I confronted him, he cried and said he wanted to be a family and didn't want to break up. I understood completely and wanted to work it out. After our marriage being bad for so long, it was finally on a better path, or so I thought. Fast forward to the last few weeks, and as it appeared we would really be able to reconcile, I began to feel guilty about not telling him the full truth. All day yesterday I struggled to find a way to tell him. I suggested we go to counseling, hoping that in an IC session I could get help to do so. I was with a client and started getting these texts that he found everything, that I was a liar and a cheat and he wanted a divorce. Because I was working, I couldn't even respond until my client left. He's so angry at me that he won't talk to me at all. I've tried everything to talk to him, following him, wrote him a letter, and he just clams up or tells me that it's over, that he's getting a lawyer, and that he's leaving me. I know what I did was wrong and can never justify anything I did. But for so long, he wouldn't talk to me, and when he did, it was just cruel. I thought we would never work it out and that I would dry up and be an old prune. It was so nice to feel like someone cared and asked about my day. The thing I craved most from the OM was his companionship. He asked about my day, told me I was pretty, none of the things my husband would do. I tried to ask BS to put into perspective what he felt was the reason he needed to have his one mini EA. I told him the only thing he didn't have more of for it to be a full-blown EA and possibly PA was time he hadn't known her long enough, and the business deal that he was sent to Brazil for was not going through. I caught him looking at her Facebook profile and possibly talking to her a few times after that, and always just tried to be brave. I will never know what really happened, although he says nothing did, but now that he wishes they did sleep together, I'm so distraught. I understand why he wants to leave, but will do anything to get him back. I don't mean to sound desperate, but I love him so much and our family. I want to grow old together and raise our kids and have grandkids together. I'm so embarrassed at what I've done and ashamed for being so stupid. I can't believe my life went from being so good to something out of a Jerry Springer episode. I'm such an idiot for letting things go on and not wising up sooner. Every time BS would crap all over me, somehow OM would appear saying nice things. The timing was really sick. It was really more of an EA than a PA, though it was definitely PA on occasion 1 to 2 year. I know I will never get anyone to feel sorry for me because I have no excuse for what I did, but can any of you BS tell me what, if anything, I can do or what I may be missing to understand what he's going through, and if any of you reconciled after an EA? TA, I would love to hear how you did it. I want with all my heart to be with him and would give up my social media accounts, instant messenger, and even my job to be with him and be a family again, and to have him want us to be a family and him want to be with me. As of now, he hasn't packed his things, but he threw out our smaller wedding photos and gave me back his wedding ring and the watch I gave him on our wedding day. I am so numb, I can't even cry. I just hate myself and don't think I'll ever stop hating myself. Our marriage went south about 3 years in, after the birth of our first child. We had patches before that, but I assumed that was normal barbecues. That's what our parents told us. When he became verbally abusive, I withdrew initially because I was hurt, and then I tried to fix it. Tried to do what I thought he wanted me to, get his favorite ice cream, not nag, not complain, etc. We would argue about everything and nothing at all. It got so bad and I felt so alone, I just didn't know what to do next. When the started, initially it was me confiding in a friend. When it became more, I just longed for the companionship. Yes, I should have kept focusing on him, but I couldn't get him to focus on us. While the was going on, I tried to keep making it work. At some point, I insisted on date night, and I think that put us on the right path. Our second vacation alone, more than one night, was for our 10th anniversary. By then, we really were truly in love again. He took care of me, I took care of him, and I was pregnant with our third baby. Other man was completely out of the picture other than a platonic business relationship. I tried to gain marketing advice for my business from him and bartered by giving him my real estate advice. I usually end relationships on a good note, just because that's the way I am, regardless of the circumstances. Eventually, before BS found out, I quit even trying to have any kind of friendship or relationship with him because I wanted nothing to do to him. Eventually, we had the marriage that I always wanted. I've been trying to apologize the entire from DD1 and DD2 and show him that I do love him and want to try to rebuild what we recently had. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. He's very hurt that it went on for as long as it did. He was willing to work it out when he thought it was 2 years intermittent chatting and 2 physical meetings. Not what the truth was 5 years of intermittent chatting and 6 physical meetings. I agree it's asinine that I did it for that long. It felt like a freight train that I couldn't get off of. Yes, no one held a gun to my head, but that's how it felt. It was kind of like my drug. I don't drink, smoke, or do drugs, but it made me feel so good. Not that it's any excuse. I own my bad choices. I'm not trying to minimize anything. It was just awful what I did. BS now won't talk to me. We're texting. I've asked him to talk to me. He says to have my attorney talk to his attorneys. I think all of you are probably right that he's never going to forgive me and file for divorce. I will never give up hope that we can work it out. I'm trying to delete my instant messenger account that I used to talk to the OM, but I've had a free account for years that can't be deleted the same way that regular accounts can. I've blocked him from emailing me, but we never emailed. I've unfriended him and blocked him from Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, and Skype. I keep those accounts for business too, so I can't completely delete them. I'm not really using any of those accounts now for anything. I just kind of went dark. Even though we had issues before that were never truly resolved, we had moved on for the better, I thought. He thinks that this recent period that was good was based on a lie. It wasn't a lie in that I wasn't with OM then and I meant everything I said and did, but I was not honest about what I did in the past. I completely own my actions and am willing to come clean and apologize to his family. But if he won't talk to me, there's nothing I can do. I'm so sad. My husband set up the majority of my accounts, email, Facebook, instant messenger, etc. If he didn't set them up, he knows all of my universal passwords, so I've never hidden any of this info from him. I used to have his but really don't know them anymore, and that was fine with me. I didn't really use any of my social media accounts to communicate with OM. The primary people I chat with in instant messenger is BS and my brother. I used to use it with my assistants for work, but I no longer have assistants, so it's unnecessary. I'm using it now solely for communicating with BS. I have had absolutely no contact with the other man and never intend to again, regardless of what happens. I want nothing to do to him. I also have no mementos of the other man who lives in another state. I once had a picture of he and a friend of mine long before the emotional affair, but deleted it too. I looked into blocking his number, but with cell company, it's expensive to do. So, I made any notifications of him contacting me as silent and changed his ringtone to a version that I can barely hear, so if he's stupid enough to contact me, he'll never get me. I have no idea why I let it go on so long. I'm dumbstruck at it because toward the end last 2 years, we argued more than not. The 2 times I saw him in those 2 years, it was not fun at all. I think I longed for the sweet talk I got in the beginning. I actually remember thinking to myself, if I'm going to put up with this crap, I can get that from my husband, but I still saw him those 2 times. I'm such an idiot. The reason I never left is because of my kids and the strong expectations of staying together. My parents and his have been married 40 plus years each. My grandparents were married for 65 plus years, and his I believe were the same. I found out a few years back that my grandfather strayed and had a son out of wedlock, but my grandmother stayed. That's what you were supposed to do, so I was led to believe that divorce is not an option. And my friends who had divorces never seemed happy afterward. It was the means to an end, but necessarily the means to happiness. I've had STD tests that comes with being pregnant, and nothing came back. I used condoms all but one time with the other man and have no idea what went through my head the one time I didn't, but that was a long time ago. We could have paternity tests, but I was pregnant with my second by the time the EA started. As for the third, I was anovulatory, no period or very irregular, when we initially tried to conceive. The last time we had physical contact 2022. It was completely protected with a condom, and OM liked to ejaculate outside of me anyway. So, I never had a doubt that she was BS's. In fact, I have an app on my phone that shows the day I ovulated and subsequent days we had slept together, so there is really no doubt. But I did offer to do paternity testing anyway. Otherwise, the time before that I saw OM was 2021. I saw him on 7 occasions from the start of the year in 2018. There was nothing until 2019, and from that point, those encounters numbered 6 times. We attempted to arrange other meetings, but one or both of us chickened out or flaked, so they never happened. I've offered to do a polygraph, but I don't know if it will help. Because it went on for so long, there are little details that I just don't remember. Apparently, I sent other man some of my pain meds after a surgery, but have absolutely no recollection of doing so, but because it was discussed in an online chat, I have to assume it happened, so I look like a liar again when questioned about it. I will try the apology letter. If, when he's ready to read it, he can. I did show him my posts from years ago when I joined the forum. He wouldn't read them, but I read some of them to him and showed him how to search for them using my handle and the search function. I also wrote one letter after DD1 and gave him another yesterday. I also found the picture of his O from Brazil when I intercepted his emotional affair where she was naked but nothing was showing, and included that. I asked him if it was really just flirting, and he said he kissed her. That he told me then, but it honestly was news to me. Not that it matters now. He also says he wished he slept with her. I told him the only thing that didn't make it physical was 1, that I found out, and 2, that his deal went south, so he didn't have the opportunity to make it so. Again, not that it matters. I'm not trying to justify my actions to him in any way. There is no excuse for what I did. I realize that. I'm only trying to apologize and take my medicine, whatever it may be. BS goes from numb to complete anger and back. Last night he wanted me gone to move out immediately and go to my brother's house. I started packing to go, but my mom called him because she thought it was excessive to want me gone so fast considering we have the kids. They have been talking, texting, apparently. After everything last night, he decided I could stay, so I just tried to stay out of his way. Prior to that, he'd been following me, trying to speed me up and get me out. When I was getting ready for bed, he hugged me in the kitchen. A long hug. I hugged him for as long as I could, but one of our kids was up and walking around, so we had to deal with that. We finally got him to bed and I went to talk to him in our room. I asked if I could hug him again. He said yes, or he didn't care, so I did and tried to just talk a little bit. I asked him if he wanted me to do anything for him. I'm trying to make sure he eats because he's hypoglycemic, and his last episode was a month ago while he was away on business. He had to be taken to a hospital via ambulance. So, I don't want it to happen again. He hasn't to this point told his family, I suspect, so that if there is any R, it won't make me a villain. That's what he told me after D-Day. He is really struggling and informed me that he is telling his family today to get the support he needs. Obviously, my mom is going to be impartial because there is no way she can excuse what I did, but she is my mom, so there is an obvious conflict of interest. I will call his family after he does to apologize to them for the damage I've done. Yesterday BS said he would go after me and take our kids and that he wanted primary physical custody of our 2 oldest kids. I have a very hard time with this because I don't want to split up our kids, but I don't want to fight him and make this difficult for them. So, I want to cooperate as best I can. I asked if we could co-parent and he said yes, but he would be the primary and I would have 49% or less. He said he would personally make this a very nasty divorce, which isn't what I want in any way. At this point the ball is in his court. He's trying to reach out to me to talk, I think. I will do that for him regardless of whether he's just lonely and hurting or whether there is a chance for I just want him to be happy with or without me. He deserves that. I deserve whatever I get at this point and I'm trying to make my peace with that. Thank you again everyone for your honesty. He came into my room before to ask what I was doing and I told him I was responding to all of you. I have been typing since then and he just came into my room again and left, presumably because our 8-year-old was asking him questions. He came back and told me that he told his sister and her husband that they were blown away and thought leaving me was the right thing to do. So, I'm sure that's the end of it. I don't know that I couldn't give anyone else the same advice. I'm truly disgusted with myself. I did not sleep with another guy while I was pregnant. No way. I could never bring myself to do that, which is just plain sleazy. With the it was one instance during the conception of our baby and it was protected. Prior to that time, I saw him 11 months earlier. He is reading this and getting angrier with me by the moment, but I'm trying to be transparent as people have suggested. I'm not trying to woo him back. I'm trying to treat him with the respect that he deserved a long time ago and not put up a fight on anything. I owe him that. He was a monster years ago and at some point, it changed. It wasn't a specific day, it just started to get better gradually. I'm not blame shifting or looking for pity. I own everything that I did. I'm finding a place to live, a therapist, and preparing to move on. It's not what I want, but I don't get a say anymore and I get that. I have no reminder of something. There were none other than the one picture. I had another of him at some point but deleted it years ago when I got mad at him. I have nothing to fear for a paternity test. If you have kids and are familiar with the process of egg fertilization, it's not scientifically possible. It's just not. Nonetheless, I will be doing one anyway. I've also contacted my doctor's office for STD tests to share with him. They were all negative or I would have been informed during the course of my pregnancy. I never made an excuse to not do a polygraph. I would like to ask how intimately familiar you are with the details of your life 5 years back. I have a hard time remembering last week. In fact, I have to write down every detail of my day or set appointments in my phone to remember or take pictures to remember a lot of things. I sent the picture of his not to try to level the playing field. It never will be. What I did was immeasurable. I wanted him to see how easy it was to start an affair, not that it is any excuse for mine. His started exactly the way mine did, except that he got caught really early on. It had the potential to be a PIA too. I don't think any of you can dispute that. The affair. I flew there. I saw him for a total of about 4 to 5 hours, over 48 hours. The first night I saw him, he came to my hotel room and we had slept together. It sucked. The next day I went to his house because the original purpose, I guess I did take the escape, was to be trained on marketing via social media, his trade, and I have the notes to prove it. For that portion he was so nasty to me and condescending. If I hadn't flown there, I would have walked out immediately. In the back of my head, I didn't want to do it, but didn't listen to my instinct and did it anyway. So stupid. It was the same on other occasions. I don't know why, but that's just how it was. I'm not overly physically charged. I was online, but in person I wasn't, and I tend not to be. With BS, he frequently was angry with me for not being in the mood when we finally rekindled our physical relationship. For me, I am wound pretty tightly and am easily stressed out. So, it affects my head by me not being able to get in the mood. The whole act of having an affair didn't sit well with me, but I never bucked up and ended it. When I was talking to or with I would imagine my grandparents and his grandparents watching from heaven and shaking their heads in disgust at me. The guilt was really bad, but then I never did anything to stop it either, which is just as bad. My comment: you went too far. A 5-year relationship with another man is damage beyond repair. If your husband gave you his ring and watch, he's most likely done. He's taken action, that he's moving on. I'm a bit taken back that you slept with the when you were pregnant and for 5 years. If I were your I'd have a paternity test on all of the children. You say they are your husbands, but you did sleep with the while you're in your childbearing years and trying to conceive. Part 2 coming today as well. Subscribe to catch the second part ending ASAP.